and welcome back to the Sidetracked Sport Podcast. I am your host, Jasmine, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about quite a niche little topic. We are going to be discussing the depth of national rivalries in cricket. And joining me today is Regina, a fellow upcoming journalist and a massive cricket fan, I think is fair to say. And she is going to be helping give us a little bit of an insight into what the hell is going on in cricket at the moment, and why is it that the national rivalries in cricket are more than just a national rivalry. So to start off, Regina, do you want to just introduce yourself and say hi?
Thank you so much, Jasmine. That was such a lovely introduction. My name is Regina Suddahazai. I work as a broadcaster and an online journalist in cricket, doing some work for Wisden and for some stuff for Sky Sports and then some stuff independently or with Cricket District. And yeah, unfortunately, as Jasmine said, I am a huge cricket fan, which is it's taxing. It's very difficult to be a cricket fan, I think, especially in this day and age. But yeah, the sport, I can't get away and I love it. And I think today's actually a really interesting topic that's really relevant to some upcoming events. So yeah, I'm excited to talk.
And do you want to give us a bit of information about your background with cricket? Because you're not only a fan, you've also played cricket yourself as well.
I did, yes. So I used to play county cricket for Sussex until this year. I just stepped away from the cricketing programme to focus on kind of a career. And then I also used to play some international cricket for Italy, which was a very cool experience. I think that's kind of what got me as well into the journalism world, because I was just intrigued by the different aspects of cricket that aren't really talked about. And yeah, we went to a World Cup qualifier. We came second in the European Division 2 qualifiers and then came third in Div 1. And all in all, I've had some cool international experiences in European cricket and then gotten to work, of course, with some of the international teams in Test cricket level. So it's been a cool journey as both a player and a broadcaster, I guess.
And I think a great place to start with where national rivalries are in cricket at the moment is what's happening now with Bangladesh, who are no longer playing in the Men's World Cup because of tensions. Will describe it. Do you want to give us a bit of an understanding as to what it is that has gone on with all of that situation, really?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so to put it simply, it's actually just, I think, a political scheme and a ploy, which is unfortunately taking it too far in cricket. So in June this year, the IPL draft came out, and if you don't know what the IPL is one of the biggest leagues in the whole of cricket. It's the Indian Premier League. It's a massive franchise, of course funded by India, which there is a lot of money in India, so therefore the contracts can get up to over $1 million, which is extraordinary. So it's every player's dream basically to play in the IPL. Bangladesh recently have become a very upcoming Test team. They've looked quite good in terms of their the skill level that they've developed, and they really have come up the ICC ranks recently, so it's good to see Bangladesh doing well. Having a player from Bangladesh such as Mustafizur Rahman, who is a seamer, very talented seamer, one of the most talented seamers I think currently in world cricket, he was drafted into the Kolkata Knight Riders, which is an extraordinary feat. Everyone is very happy for a contract of $1 million. Well, unfortunately, due to some tensions between India and Bangladesh, this includes religious tensions, political tensions as well, of kicking out the ex-Bangladeshi minister from India in retaliation for some terrorist attacks that happened in Bangladesh. He was secretly terminated from the team and his contract was taken away, which wasn't really spoken about in the media, hence why it happened in June. And now the fuss is kicking up, of course, upcoming to the World Cup. When the IPL were asked them why they kicked out Mustafizur Rahman, they basically said that it was to protect him. They didn't think that he would feel safe in India, and it's basically a security threat for the team in general. So it made a bit of sense to kick him out. But obviously, he loses a lot of money, so you feel bad for him ultimately. And then Bangladesh, of course, off the back of this said, well, if it's not safe for him to be in India, it's not safe for us to be in India. So we don't want to play our games in India. Now, I'm sure we'll get on to Pakistan and India later on, which is a whole different story. But the reason that this World Cup is hosted in both India and Sri Lanka is because of Pakistan not being able to play in India. So Bangladesh said, if Pakistan can do it, we want to move too. The ICC and the BCCI denied this request, and they said that there is no security threat whatsoever for the Bengali team in India. Now, of course, this is slightly controversial, especially as Rahman's contract was terminated due to security threats and security reasonings. They were worried for his security. So a whole Bengali team coming to India, I think, is a little bit more threatening and could cause probably a bigger sort of uprally or sort of incident. So it does contradict slightly, but the BCCI just said, nope, this isn't fair. And we also have a team lined up if you don't want to play. So Bangladesh basically said, cool, you know what? We don't want to get rid of our morals for this. We don't want to play in India. We are going to withdraw from the tournament. To which the ICC said, yeah, happily, we'll take Scotland instead. So I think all in all, it's a story in which its political governments have taken it too far, and I think security is quite an easy way to try and deny someone access, as well as an easy excuse, when in reality the government, and unfortunately the head of the ICC, has very close links to the Indian government. It makes it very, very accessible for the Indian government to have such a say in what happens in world cricket. And again, that money value that comes with Indian cricket, because there is such a cricket loving population in India, has caused them to have most of the say. And unfortunately, I feel bad for Bangladesh, because these are players who have worked so hard to get to where they've come from, and to compete in a World Cup this big it's really shameful that they're probably not going to receive the money that they needed to help restore their facilities and keep them going, as well as just in general the players won't really get to participate in a World Cup, which I'm sure they were really looking forward to.
Yeah, and like you said at the end there, like, participating in a World Cup is more than just getting to go play some cricket and having fun. It brings a lot of eyes and attention and funding a lot of the time to the sport for that country. And whilst it's great that Scotland are now getting to participate, it's come about in quite an unusual circumstance. And like you said, it's a shame for Bangladesh that they don't get to have that honour anymore, and their fans don't get to support them in that anymore either. And it's all been quite a confusing way of going about it. You also mentioned that we've not actually seen much of this in the media at all, and I think particularly it might be different in places like Bangladesh and India, I'm sure, but in the UK we certainly haven't seen much of it in our media. And I think it's interesting that we've been so separate from it, even though obviously we're a massive cricket nation as well. And I wonder whether part of that comes from a lot of the journalists here maybe not having that in-depth understanding of what the rivalries are like on the ground, and having that like cultural understanding of, okay, this is actually what it means for people from India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, and the impact it can have, really.
100%. I think that is literally the spot on way to put it. And in terms of headlines, you see headlines here and it's just saying Bangladesh have boycotted the World Cup, but it's not going into depth of why Bangladesh could actually be seen as victims in this situation. I think unfortunately, okay, think about the nation, you can think about politics, you can think about the team, but all in all, it's actually the players that miss out. And especially Rahman, he misses out hugely on a life-changing deal with the Indian Premier League that gives him access to all these franchises across the world. And the IPL as well has influenced a lot of the other franchises, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But it's caused such an uproar that it's a shame to see Bangladesh kind of blacklisted like this and kind of labelled as, oh, you know, why would they do this? Why would they want to try and impact the World Cup in this stance? It's just pointless. But it's not pointless. It's actually a fight for human rights, I think, in the workforce, because it is a job at the end of the day. So yeah, it is definitely a shame. And I definitely think the lack of education from journalists here, sometimes when it comes to those rivalries, it's very easy to say, oh, just play cricket, it's just a game. But unfortunately, politics, especially in South Asia, massively impacts the sporting world. So one day I think it will probably be understood if maybe England and Australia have some sort of massive falling out and it causes us not to ever play in Australia again, but the full extent isn't really getting to be shown. And I also think that's because people are scared as well of saying too much against the Indian sort of scheme of things, because they've invested so much money in English cricket.
I think that might actually be what would help English fans to understand maybe the depths that it goes to, is if we had a big falling out with Australia. And whilst England and Australia have an absolutely massive rivalry in cricket and rugby, like almost anything really, it doesn't go to the same depths as it does in the South Asian countries. And it's quite important to recognise that it is different. It's not simply just a boycott. It does have a lot more going into it. And I think we need to discuss India-Pakistan, because as you said, Pakistan don't play in India, so why can't Bangladesh, was kind of their point of why they wanted to play in Sri Lanka. And so I feel we kind of need to address that as well. So do you want to try and give us as best an explanation as you can of that sort of scenario, because you'll likely have a much better way of explaining it than I do, I'm sure.
Oh no, it's a hard thing to explain because I think a lot of people still question the integrity of the arguments of both sides. It all kind of stems from the ongoing rivalry, obviously, Pakistan. So if we look at the political situation of Pakistan and India, obviously colonialism came to South Asia and split both Pakistan and India, kind of mostly divided by religion. Most of it was actually just Muslims in Pakistan, Hindus in India, and then kind of the Sikh population unfortunately had to find their way, which it's very unfortunate. From this colonialism sort of stance, places like Kashmir, places like Punjab were argued between both countries, and I think Punjab has been settled a little bit better, but Kashmir is still massively an issue, so there's no actually clear understanding on who owns Kashmir, which is actually where my family is from. So I've gotten to go and see the active war sites and stuff like that, and it's sad because unfortunately Kashmir is very much an active war site, so there is a war still going on between the two countries. Now, if we go back to 2008, that's the last time that India actually came to Pakistan to play cricket, and let's remember that South Asia is the biggest continent for cricket in terms of fans. So having India come to Pakistan is a massive feat for the Pakistani fans. This is incredible, and it's one of the most heated rivalries ever. Yes, due to political stances, but ultimately the players get on, but they're neighbouring countries, so it's a rivalry for anything. And 2008, great series. It was amazing. It was incredible. You had some of the best players playing in Pakistan, and I'm sure it meant the world. Unfortunately, in 2009, there was a terrorist attack in Pakistan with the Sri Lankan team. The Sri Lankan team came to visit, and there were snipers basically shooting at the team bus. A lot of the players were shot. I think one person passed away. It was really, really tragic, and the ICC basically said to Pakistan, it's not safe to have cricket here, and they banned all cricket in Pakistan until security measures were met. Now, if we forward back to present day, during this whole escapade, some more political tensions, of course, happened between Pakistan and India, like it always will. And basically, Pakistan refused to play in India. They said, there's no point in us playing in India. None of our people can come and support. It's a hostile environment because people just call us terrible things due to the political climate and the tensions between the two. And it just wasn't really a nice place for the Pakistan team to go anymore, even though they had no problem with the Indian team themselves. So they stopped all of that, and every tournament that was played in India, Pakistan would play in Sri Lanka. It was just always decided Sri Lanka or the UAE, where there was a neutral sort of standing. Now, if we fast forward to the the World Cup in India, the last World Cup in India, that was the first time Pakistan has played in India for, I think it's over 20 plus years, which was ridiculous. And cricket did come back to Pakistan later on, which Australia went on tour. It was a brilliant tour, it was incredible. But for this World Cup in specific, it was in India, and Pakistan went to India. It was never heard of. They were like, oh, wow, this is breaking news in world cricket. Maybe the tensions will be resolved. There was one Pakistan fan in the whole ground, which is incredible. I think it was an Australian man who just said, hey, let me root for Pakistan. But you know what? It was a progression in world cricket, and Pakistan actually did really, really well, despite all the odds against them. But it felt like there was something reconciling there, which is important. Then the Champions Trophy last year. This is where things basically started to go massively wrong. It was hosted in Pakistan, as Pakistan were the holders of the Champions Trophy, and India refused to play in Pakistan. They refused. They just said, no, we're not going to play there. It's a security threat. We don't want to play in Pakistan. And of course, it's caused controversy because Pakistan just went to India. So why is this such a problem now? It's really trying to figure out, why is India so hostile to Pakistan in this sort of atmosphere, especially because it's been deemed so safe. And I can attest to that. Like, I went to Pakistan and there are security everywhere. Like, that's just for normal people. So imagine for cricket teams where cricket is worshipped in Pakistan, like worshipped. It's a god. So looking at that in that sort of way, I think it's unfair for India to say no. Nevertheless, they played in the UAE. It was a good Champions Trophy. I mean, it wasn't the greatest thing to watch on TV, but it was enjoyable. And then later on, as we go more and more forward, just tensions keep on rising between India and Pakistan say, you know what, you didn't even come to us for the Champions Trophy, we're not coming to you for the World Cup, so we're going to play in Sri Lanka. And it was just agreed between the two that they were going to play in Sri Lanka. But this was also the result of the Asia Cup, where Indian players refused to shake the hands of the Pakistani players. And shaking the hand isn't a requirement in any sport, but it's just a sign of respect. And again, because we've had no clear tensions between Pakistan and India, it was unclear to see why they did this to them, but they just refused to shake their hands. And of course, Pakistan just said, we are tired of being disrespected by you, so we're going to move and play in Sri Lanka. And unfortunately, I don't think there is any reconciliation with that for the next couple of years until the BCCI is able to actually become accountable. But it is what it is, and at least Pakistan might have an advantage of playing at the same ground for this World Cup. We'll see.
It is a highly complicated situation. India, Pakistan, and then bring in Bangladesh as well. It's not as simple as this is what's happened and this is how you fix it. And who knows if it even is sort of fixable, because it's been so long now that India and Pakistan specifically as well have had this rivalry. And like you said, it dates all the way back to colonialism. It's not the country's fault at all. And so how do you see it going forward? Is there a way for India and Pakistan, or even with Bangladesh as well, for things to be even slightly mended? Because a lot of people listening are probably quite shocked to hear how deep the story goes, because we don't see much of it here in the UK media, as we've already said. And so actually understanding how deep it goes might come as a bit of a surprise, because often here rivalries are rife in most sports, but they're not so deep that countries will refuse to go and play in another country, or it's not quite as bad as that. So do you see there being a way of anything improving, maybe not in the next couple of years, but long term?
See, the problem with India, Pakistan is the fact that obviously, as we said, the money comes into it massively, and the IPL is very rich. So the IPL have actually bought major franchises around the world. This includes the recent 100, which is in England, which I feel like is where the journalists have actually started to realise, like, oh, this is a bit difficult. As well as the South African T20, some teams in the Abu Dhabi T20, the MLC in America. And the problem with this is that in the IPL, Pakistani players are actually now banned from playing in the IPL. So it gets deeper than just India versus Pakistan. It's looking at Pakistani players and saying, you're not actually even allowed to play in our franchises. So coming to England to play in a franchise is huge for a Pakistani player, and that's an incredible cash grab as well. I mean, this is their job. They want to earn some money. But not being able to access certain teams and having a lesser opportunity to get picked for certain teams is so unfair, because the IPL ruling is that no Pakistani players is playing our teams. So we're definitely not going to see any Pakistani players playing for Manchester Super Giants or the Mumbai Indian Londons. It's not going to work. So I think, unfortunately, because of that, there's a lot of resentment between Pakistan and India saying, well, why are you trying to discourage our players from playing? And bear in mind, some of these players are world renowned, but in terms of playing in each other's countries, I feel like it is something that can be settled very easily. Unfortunately, as we said, politics takes a massive step in cricket, especially in South Asia. So until both political systems, I think, are a bit more for the people, if that makes sense, I think it won't be an easily resolved issue, and I think it will remain a rivalry, which is a shame, because Pakistan and India actually brings in some of the most money from any other game in the whole entire world. Like, the revenue on that game is insane. I think it nearly equates to the Super Bowl. So obviously for the upcoming World Cup, Pakistan are so disappointed by the decision made with Bangladesh. It's actually a threat to boycott that game, which is a government administered decision. It's not even the PCB. So again, it makes that question, like, why is the government getting so heavily involved in the cricket? Why isn't this a PCB decision? Which is unfair, and unfortunately it just doesn't make it seem like it's going to be a positive experience for Pakistan and India to ever have that reconciliation, unless the players take a stance themselves. But of course, that could cause them from getting axed from the team. So I think it's very difficult to kind of put that onus on the players to speak up about it. But at the same time, maybe that's just what it's going to have to take, that sort of revolution from the cricket board themselves to say, this isn't fair, for it to maybe fix itself. But the fans and the players, I just feel for them, because I think it is ruining their experience of cricket. And unfortunately, I feel like cricket is just going to become not as important to Asia as it once was.
And I think that's really important to recognise, is that actually if this does continue to get worse, or not even maintain sort of the same level of rivalry, if the relations between these countries continue to decline, it is just going to impact global cricket as a whole. It's not just going to impact those countries, because you're not going to have some of the biggest players or eventually teams coming to these tournaments. And so, yes, whoever wins this upcoming World Cup, okay, you've won, but you've not played Bangladesh. And it's like, you're not going to be playing some of the best players and best teams in the world. And it's kind of taking away from potentially in the future taking away from the authenticity of these tournaments because you're not having the best people. How can you call it the World Cup if you don't have the best people? It's just a cup. Yeah. And so it's sort of looking at how can it, like we said, it can't really be just resolved. It's not a magical like click a finger and oh yay, we're all friends, but trying to maintain some sort of relationship that means everyone can still play, because at the end of the day, that's what all of the athletes and the fans and the coaches hopefully all want to do. They just want to play and enjoy their sport, because that's why they've taken it up in the first place. They just love to play cricket. And I guess a way that maybe might resonate with some English or British fans that don't necessarily understand the scenario that's going on in cricket in South Asia at the moment is, if you look at it with football, say England and France somehow were once one country, they were cut in half, French one side, and you're now English on this side, and then in football the French start boycotting England, the England start boycotting France for years and years and years and years and years. You're not going to magically just be like, shall we just, stop arguing? Like, it is a lot deeper than that.
It's so true.
And if something like that did happen in football in this country, it would be mind-breaking, because football is life here, like how cricket is in some of those countries as well. And so I think that's a really important thing to consider for people, is if football is your like sport, that you're like, I live and breathe football, how, if you could apply this scenario to whatever country it is you support, how would that impact you as a fan and the players? Because then when you can see it in sort of a scenario that you can relate to, it can be easier, I feel, to sort of sympathise but also try and understand the impact it can have on the wider tournaments, and not just, oh well, Bangladesh aren't playing, oh well, carry on. Like, it's a lot more than that.
It's a whole nation, like a whole nation is being deprived of a World Cup, and it's unfortunate because as well Bangladesh has said we're not even going to show their World Cup in Bangladesh, like it's not allowed anymore. So you've taken away a joy, and I think especially for the people of Bangladesh, like that is a joy. It's a hobby, you're interested in cricket. So it's unfortunate, but there has been such proof of politics being put to the side for cricket. I mean, my dad used to be the manager of the USA cricket team in 2010, which, of course, in 2010, there was mass tensions between Afghanistan and USA. There was war. In the World Cup qualifiers, USA played Afghanistan, which was never heard of, despite two massive governing bodies where there is an active war going on in Afghanistan, much larger than many other wars. They still played cricket. They still played, and the players still looked at each other and said, you're here to play cricket, I'm here to play cricket. That's all it is. That's literally all it is. And that game was so close. It was really close. Unfortunately, my dad talks about how USA lost by 6 runs, so they were really upset. But it's proof that if you overcome that political standpoint, realistically, it's just a game of cricket. And that was one of their best games of cricket that they ever played. So it does get you questioning, like, why is there now such a discrepancy between Pakistan and India? Is it just drawing on for additional dramatic effect? Which it probably isn't, but it does make sense to make it a lot cooler. It sells it a lot more. But also, it's just like, why are the players themselves not able to kind of look at the game that way, and how difficult it must be for them to look at that way? And like you said, if this was put in football, I think it would be a lot larger, and I think it would be a lot more obvious in terms of the discrimination against certain teams. And we've seen it in the politics in football of what players have done to certain countries, but they've still played the game. And whether or not you agree with one country or agree with another country, the fact is the footballers still played a game. No matter how nasty it was played. And I think that's what's important is, look, keep it all on the pitch, but you can go in your separate changing rooms afterwards. You don't need to talk to each other. So I don't know. I think there is hope by looking at things like Afghanistan and America. But again, those were slightly lower divisions in 2010. Obviously now they're quite world renowned. But I don't know. I think looking at that standpoint, you would have thought in 2026 there'd be a lot more understanding and a lot more push for the entertainment industry, to be a bit better, because at the end of the day, sports is entertainment.
And I guess it is finding that balance between sport is political, but also sport is sport, and we should be allowed to enjoy sport, and the fans, the players, should be allowed to play without political tensions stopping it for this long. Occasionally, governments and governing bodies have stepped in certain scenarios to prevent certain teams or players from participating in sports, and obviously sometimes that is necessary, but this doesn't seem to me, from my perspective, as a scenario where it's necessary. It feels like there should be some sort of effort from the wider world of cricket to bring at least India and Pakistan together, and hopefully with that Bangladesh's relationships will also be sort of improved as well as a result, because let's be honest, they didn't cause this situation themselves, and so they shouldn't have to sort it by themselves. It should be a global effort, because everyone should want to play the best in the world, and when that's not happening, or certain countries are not being allowed to travel to certain tournaments and play at home ground because of these tensions, it's not fair for everyone. And what you were saying about even the World Cup's not being broadcast in Bangladesh, even that is going to have a knock-on effect with the younger generations of children, or even like young teens growing up in Bangladesh and who have grown up watching cricket or will grow up to watch cricket. If tournaments start to not be broadcast because people are getting excluded from things, then those countries are eventually going to drop off the world rankings. They're not going to even qualify for these tournaments anymore, let alone be able to boycott, be able to choose to play or not. And that will just have a massive impact going forward as well, because then you'll end up with a very, 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 very small handful of countries that control the top of the tournaments even more so than they do now, and that's not going to be good for anyone. It will make cricket less interesting, and that's not what we want.
No, especially a global game that they're really trying to capitalise, especially in like the USA, for example. They're really trying to make money on cricket now. And I think looking at your biggest money value game, which actually brings a lot of attention to the sport, and you've just completely said, oh, you know what, we're going to boycott it due to this and this and this. You have to ask, to what extent can Pakistan really afford to do that? Because this game brings in money for them as well. So I think it's that ideology that like you need to put it all aside. And this is, like you said, the inspiration for the younger generation, the interest in the cricket. Like, why are we trying to forfeit that bit? Because ultimately we all have the same goal of making cricket big, because everyone benefits when cricket is big. So I think slowly, it probably will get sorted, but I think it will also take the other nations and the other cricketing governing bodies to actually look at what's going on and probably have a bit of a say. So I'm sure that at the ICC they're having a bit of a meeting with the ECB, the PCB, the BCCI, Cricket Oz. Like, they're going to have a massive discussion to try and fix this, because there's no way that we're having an issue this close to a World Cup. And that's the biggest thing, is this issue ahead of the World Cup. I mean, Scotland, they did not have a good qualifier at all. They were not great, I'll be honest. But they had to find a sponsor. They had to get ready for a World Cup, like with 1 week notice before they were supposed to be in India and Sri Lanka, which is ridiculous. Like, you've put all that sudden pressure onto Scotland, but also is it unfair because Italy and Ireland, who qualified, and the Netherlands, who qualified for this World Cup from Europe, they actually did so well, who actually came out of the European groups so well. Like, they played such a good tournament, and all of a sudden to have Scotland, who didn't play as well in that tournament, now come through. You're sitting there questioning, like, oh, is this really fair? Is it fair at all? No, especially when Bangladesh actually has some of the most highest ICC ranked players at the moment. So I think all in all, it's the governing bodies obviously have a massive issue, but also I think certain groups and certain people have caused this ultimately. Like, the issues in Bangladesh, it's unfair, but that's just because a certain group of people have done certain things to a certain group of people, which is not fair. But why should the whole team have to suffer? That's the main thing. Like, they're athletes at the end of the day, they're not politicians, and they're not sitting there saying, you know, we support this government. No, they're sitting there saying, we just want to play cricket, we want to win a World Cup. So it's questioning their integrity, I think, as well as people.
And I think it becomes a bit of a slippery slope when you start not letting countries participate. Obviously Bangladesh, they are boycotting, but it can quickly become a much larger issue if everyone doesn't work together to try and come to an agreement that suits everyone as much as possible. Because if you start having one team not play, soon it will be, okay, well, players from this team can't play, and so that team won't be as good, and so they won't play, and it's like it will very quickly become a select few teams that are controlled by people who want them to playing, if that makes sense.
100%, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's obviously just not where you want cricket to go. It's not where you want any sport to go, and that's the basics of it. Is it's sport at the end of the day, and yes, sport can be political. It is political. You can't separate it completely. India and Pakistan, anytime soon, are not going to be best friends. They're just not. It's not going to happen, and we know that. That's fine, but there should be a way to work towards everyone being able to play cricket together and use sport as a way to sort of try and unite the countries and give them a shared interest, because they do all love cricket at the end of the day. That is the point. These teams, they love cricket and they just want to play. So we need to find a way to sort of bring them together. But I think looking towards how it impacts us here in the UK, we've mentioned the 100 a little bit, and it's quite a new tournament, I guess, in relation to the history of cricket. And it is sort of revolutionising a little bit how cricket is played in the UK. It's a lot flashier, it's a lot more engaging for, I'd say, people who don't know cricket. And some traditional cricket fans aren't a fan of it, but if it's bringing in new fans to the sport, then it should be a good thing. But if the IPL are involved, do you want to sort of explain what impacts that could have on the 100 itself?
Yeah, of course. So the 100, obviously, as you said, it's been branded to be a bit more exciting because cricket isn't for everyone. It's a long game. 3 hours is a long time compared to a 90-minute football match. So the 100 looks at it and says, okay, let's shorten the game a lot more. And it has been cool. You're having people like Zara Larsson performing at Lord's. That's never been done before in cricket, but it's an incredible experience nonetheless. I think the colours and the branding is so much cooler. We've seen with the IPL investing in the 100 that there has been changes of the teams. So, like I said previously, we have Mumbai Indians London, which I'm not going to give my 2 cents about it, but I don't think it makes the most sense. Then you have things like Manchester Supergiants, and the logo is an elephant. I don't think I've ever seen an elephant in Manchester. It's not really been the thing I've ever seen. There's a story behind it, which I'm not really 100% too sure on, but it doesn't make the most amount of sense. However, this whole rebranding has just turned into something completely different, and I think a lot of people are upset with this branding because the 100 got to a point where people were invested in it and they understood and they liked it. And the women's game, it grew the women's game so much, which was so important. Having 2 games on one night, it's never been done before in cricket, and it's so incredible because so many people actually showed up for the women's game. They didn't just show up for the men's. So I think those implications were so important to then have the IPL come in and kind of try to rebrand it, change it a little bit more. It's a bit disappointing because they got so far with it, but unfortunately I feel like the 100 just wasn't making the money that they needed it to make, so they needed that investment from the IPL. But there is still a bit of hype and a bit of excitement coming into this IPL because there's still teams that have stayed the same. Welsh Fire, Southern Brave has changed their colours. They were the only green team and now they're red and blue, but at least they're still Southern Brave. They've changed the names of the Northern Supergiants to Leeds. It's now just being used as Leeds, which I think is very interesting. But yeah, I think there will be still opportunities to remain loyal to your team, if you will, or keep that affiliation. But it does change it. It changes it a lot more. And I also think that, obviously, what I said previously with Pakistani players not being able to play in the IPL, that's huge because then now they're restricted from a lot of the teams that get to play in England. And it might bring some Indian players to England. That's the biggest thing because India are really strict on who can play in franchises from India. They don't really like their players playing outside of India. So potentially with the IPL being here, we could have a Virat Kohli season in England, which would be incredible. Could you imagine Virat Kohli playing in the 100? I think tickets would be sold out and probably double the price. So there could be some positivity coming from this. But it is scary because it is unknown, and I think we're just a bit upset because of the branding. Branding is a big part of it. Also, unfortunately, in the IPL, there's been a huge use of AI. I don't know if you've seen any of this, but you're having some interesting images, like Lauren Bell, she's a seamer, and all of a sudden she's become a gardener when she took a couple wickets. I was like, oh, I didn't know that was her profession. And it's weird because then you see social media content, and I don't know if it's just for you, but if I'm not watching a game, I see a lot of it on social media. So seeing a lot of the AI content coming out of it is a bit scary. And I think that will probably be replicated in the 100 because now these accounts will be owned by the Indian media. So there's a lot of insurity. I think that's the biggest thing. I think after this year, I'll probably have a better answer for you and how I think it will go. But I don't think I can really properly picture it until it happens. And it's unfortunate because I feel like tournaments like the Vitality Blast in England, it's a T20 tournament. It's a bit more traditional format, but it's a really good tournament. And I think there could have been a lot of money invested into that, but it wasn't. And it's a shame because then you have the 100, which is the next best thing. So I really don't have a really straightforward answer for you for that. I think it's positive and negative. But as long as people keep watching the game and people keep coming to watch and support the women, I'm happy with either or.
And I think the 100 is the perfect example of how national rivalries in cricket can or potentially will spill into other countries', I guess, business. And it will become more apparent potentially this summer with the 100. We'll see. Obviously, we don't know yet how it will impact that, but there is a potential for Indian players to come here, like you said, and potentially for Pakistani players to be excluded from certain teams, and so that could potentially cause some issues going forward into the summer with the 100. But yeah, as of right now, we can't say where that's going to go because we don't know, and I think that's a great point to close the podcast off on as we look towards the summer, hopefully look towards a great 100 this summer again. And I think, yeah, it's a good way to reflect on how these international rivalries can affect you back here in the UK. It's not just, oh, it's really far away, I don't need to worry. It can sort of start to spill over, and I think that's a great way to close it all off. So I want to say thank you so much, Regina, for joining me and for being so insightful and giving us a really useful explanation into some really complicated topics, because they are quite difficult to explain and to understand as well. And so it's been really great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jasmine. It's awesome what you're doing. So keep on killing it.
Thank you. And thank you everyone so much for listening. I will see you next time, and thank you for getting sidetracked with us.